Okay, land trains week 6. Recap. Um, Lots of little progress. Oh, this is demo mode. That's fine. So, first things first, the locomotive section of the train looks awful and is now made up of 3 sections. The controls are still pretty good. We now have the controls around the bottom, and we can actually upgrade. Okay, settings dead, so that makes it a little bit easier. So we can navigate through the train across the bottom, and we can create a lower section. It didn't work. Did it work? Does this work? Nope, lower section is not working right now. Oh, there's the initialization. So you can see that like most of them have a little carriage of like wood, and now one of them has this exchange. The exchange does is relatively simple. It makes it so that when you are picking up supplies, it will automatically convert some of the supplies to gems. This means you end up with more gems, which allows you to then theoretically upgrade your locomotive better and your wagons better. But at the exchange, your wagon would grow less, or your train would be growing less. And right now, the plan is the only way for health recovery to be kind of focused around, you know, you want more health, you make a longer train. But hey, that seems to be working. What else do we have? We have pickup range. That's this one. And yeah, all of these are just canny artifacts that I'm using. Except for the locomotive. Well, the locomotive is mostly canny stuff too. Some tractor wheels and other stuff. So yeah, overall things are going relatively well. Progress is relatively good. The little zappy lightning thing is looking a lot better than it used to. Think that's most of it. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we'll just leave it on that. So, pretty happy with the updates. Most of the updates this time around are actually code related. So, that's what we're gonna actually be looking at now. Goodbye. Welcome to Visual Studio. Don't think I've ever pulled this up before. Yeah, so let's talk about the project layout and some of the things, because that's where there's a lot of differences. So I went a little bit just with what came out of the box, right? I went and said, okay, it puts my scripts in scripts, so that's where all of my important bits are, right? So my combat section dealing with like what team you're on, how damage is handled, keeping track of all the participants. Right, so I create a registry of participants for bugs and players and humans and treasures, and each team keeps track of like, hey, who are my enemies, so that when I query the registry, I can do all of those things. And then the way that the targeting works behind the scenes is I have a background targeting updater. So what the background targeting updater does is that it finds all the participants that require a target. It's just an interface that they have to implement. And then it will populate those targets in a background thread, which allows me to keep more and more stuff off of the UI thread and not have to focus as much on like the search optimizations and everything else at this point in time. This is working really well. But one of the things I started to run into was that I wasn't doing a very good job with my naming. When I started, I didn't separate out enough of my node types scenes. I didn't separate enough of my scenes into their different individual pieces. So now I have my UI scenes are in here, and my treasure scenes live over here, and my train scenes live over here, and I got my lower decks and my upper decks. And it's a lot cleaner, and I also changed the naming of a lot of these things. This one should be called a view, whatever. But most of them I updated the namings. I made sure that everything has view at the end, and that makes it a lot easier to avoid naming collisions, because the train equivalent in scripts, I've got a lower deck controller, which then has the information of like, hey, this is some default implementation information, or my train engine. This used to be called a locomotive. Lots of renaming this week. This week has been mostly that. Implements iParticipant, implements iTrain part, and then in here I maintain most of my state, and then effectively the UI components, the views, are just tying straight to this. I think there's too much else going on that we're talking about in this one. Let's actually go through the items for this week. So week 6, shooting lines of a black shadow. I reduced the effect of this. Not too bad. I figured out how to actually pick one of the lightning bolts instead of all 4. So I learned how to use texture maps a little bit better. I'm kind of happy about that. Removed friendly fire. I still don't have targeting preferences implemented. That's something that I need to work on. The mortar bug used to spawn underneath players. Can't do that anymore. Nothing can spawn underneath the player. Worms have started respecting the map edge. So it will actually check whether or not a square is part of the map before trying to move to it. And that's kind of an issue because my map is like the square, but then I have a border around it. And that border is also, I mean, they're squares. They're just not supposed to be moved into. So I forgot to actually limit for that. So added the logic for that. UI, lots of improvements here. You know, now when you get more hearts, then you get little breaks in there, and it resizes nicely. Scrolling for your train across the bottom, it's not pretty, but it works, so I'm pretty happy with that. Didn't get any of the small features. This has been the majority of the work. Renaming the engine, all the bugs, all the upper and lower decks of the cars. Lots of cleanup in there. Added most of the lower decks in there. So we have the exchange, which takes resources and turns them into coins, which will stop you from growing as long. It also stops you from healing. It allows you to build more elite, if you will, towers quicker at the expense of a longer train. Raid, pickup range. It will also increase your interaction range with some objectives, which are not in the game yet. Repair, I don't know how I'm going to handle repair yet. It might be that this repairs a certain amount of hearts when you transition from one level to the next. I think that's the way I'm leaning. I don't want to make it too easy to attrition your way through. Broadsides, this is effectively just 2 short-range area of effect cannons poking out on either side, which cannot be upgraded further. So this would be a way to clear area of effect stuff. Add controller support, broke up the engine, add smoke to the engine. Refactoring the actual car, train car. And did a bunch of T4 stuff to generate some of the code for me. So one of the things that I found is for like resources, like these are all my scenes that the thing finds. Now, to find these scenes, you end up plugging these strings into your code. I don't like strings in code, so I added some TT files that allow you to T4 text templating. It's part of Visual Studio's built-in. Back in the day of ASP MVC, T4 was kind of a big deal. Nowadays, I don't even know if people do anything with it anymore. But still exists. And this can effectively loop through, find all the files, generate those strings, and did the same thing for the global suppression. And the reason for that is that Godot doesn't by default put stuff in namespaces, which could be because I don't know how to set up the project properly. And Godot has naming styles that conflict with the way things are set up. So I can automatically generate my global suppression, and that means that we have 0 errors, 1 warning, and 4 messages. Yeah, I can fix this. Anyway, so it makes it more manageable, allows me to keep paying attention to the different things that it highlights. So I'm pretty happy about that. I think I'm going to call it there for this week. The goal for next week is a little bit lighter. A lot of testing around the upper decks and lower decks, make sure everything works the way it's supposed to. Fire tower and the ice towers, make sure those are working as they're supposed to. Maybe implement ranking up. Start charging gems for building things and ranking things up, so we can start getting that basic economy part in there. I still want to build credits, probably not going to happen. And then I have a couple of bugs and small features I want to work on, but mainly focused on just general gameplay improvements for the next week. Kind of get to a clean slate so that we can start focusing on getting to the first big milestone, which is getting this project to the point where it will be public. I definitely want to do some UI stuff needs to be improved, some polish needs to be put on, and I need to have a clear vision of what needs to happen for me to get to the point where we can turn this into a releasable demo. Alright, that's it.